Good evening and welcome to this Monday night edition of the People Show right here on Intellectual Radio with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas. We are also live streaming on Facebook Live, YouTube, and of course, iHeartRadio. Our telephone number is 708-223-8953, 708-223-8953, 708-223-8953, and we welcome your calls and engagement in our conversation.
What's that number again?
708-223-8953.
Yeah, it's a lot better when the folks call, man. You know, I love to hear from people, real people, to agree or disagree, one side or the other, or maybe no side, just to hear from the public. Busy week for you?
Very busy week. I was down in Florida dealing with some family stuff, but very busy. Got back in the city yesterday. My brother is, as I told you, he had a stroke on the 4th of July. He's doing better. He's got a ways to go.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about that.
He's going to be released tomorrow. He's certainly, thank God, he is in the best stroke rehabilitation facility in the country.
In the country?
Jackson, Maine. Jackson Memorial Hospital has one of
the
number one best.
That's in Miami.
In Miami.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, but thank God my sister reached out to him that morning. So I think that it could have been a lot worse. So we're grateful for that.
Yeah, it's critical that, you know, people who suffer those strokes get medical attention very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very tragic situation happen in my family where my mother had a stroke and she lived alone and no one was there until several hours. And that, you know, it was quite, it injured her quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're in a very helpless position.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what that was like. I mean, and you told me about that story, and just hearing about it, having somebody in a helpless situation like that, right? Which really kind of lends to whether or not people at a certain age, should they really be alone?
No. And but you know, the tragedy is that with the rates of marriage going down, particularly for Black people, Black women in particular, I think the stats now say that only 1 in 4 Black women will marry in their lives, which means they will be at least without a husband. Now, that doesn't preclude the children from taking care of them. But when you think about what happens to a single male when he is old and he can't pay the rent anymore and he can't pay the rent anymore, he ends up on the street. And there's a fear that could happen to more women moving forward because, again, they're going to be alone in the world in the future if only 1 in 4 Black women are marrying.
Well, you know, even women tend to outlive, even when they do marry, they tend to outlive their spouses. And so you have a greater rate of widow women than you do widowed men.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it going through these experiences, and in particular with my mother, but you know, with my mother, my brother was there, right? My brother was there, and so there was always somebody there. But you know, for other people who don't have, you know, a lot of extended family, you know, I really, you know, I think about that.
Or immediate family. I mean, they have, you know, and I think that goes to, you know, a real problem, I believe, in American society, because it's just not happening to Black people. It's happening across the board.
Right.
I mean, we tend to be getting the worst of it, but families are families in America are disintegrating. And I think that's one of the things that, we talk about here sometimes, is restoring the family, restoring the particularly the Black family, and raising awareness about what's happening to us and how much of this of our family disintegrating is contributing to some of the social problems that are happening in our community that perhaps weren't happening 50 years ago because we had a much more stable family environment. But now we don't have that. And I think it portends some difficult times. But if we begin to start talking about it, preaching it, teaching it, the value of family, I think we can help ourselves recover from some of the things, some of the systemic racism that we hear about all the time. How much of that can we really deal with by restoring our family? Because the systemic racism was there it was worse 50, 75, 100 years ago. But we are more vulnerable because our family unit has been so broken and disrupted. And a lot of people are accepting it these days. They say that's life. That's just the way it is. Well, I would submit to you, I don't think that is. If that is the way it is, that's something that we can work on, that we can change.
Well, I think we need to be more communal. I certainly think we need to be more communal. And I think that 40, 50, 60 years ago, we were much more communal, where we had an interdependent, not only just our families, but we had an interdependency and reliance on our neighbors. I talk often about, I joke about that I'm going to write a book called A Cup of Flour and a Cup of Sugar. Because as a child growing up, you could always go, your mother would send you next door. We had Big Mama next door, and I use these names because these are people who were very important to us. John Hollenshed and Ann Hollenshed, my Big Mama who died a few years ago. She was 102 years old. Or Uncle Joe and Miss Long next door, or Miss Irene in the back. All of these neighbors that if we needed flour, we needed sugar, we needed bread, milk that you didn't have, your mother would tell you, go to Miss Ann's house and she's going to give you some flour or some sugar. And when you went there, you didn't just get the flour and the sugar, you had a conversation. Mm-hmm. So there was this intercommunal connection, interdependency that we had that I think a lot of that we can contribute that we had to depend on each other. And I think coming out of, when you can go all the way back, coming out of slavery, when you had nothing, you had each other to depend on to survive. And I think that went strong all the way up to, I could see where it started to break down in the late 70s, early 80s, when our generation started saying things like, well, I'm not going to make my kids do this. I'm not going to make my kids do that. Those things that our parents had us doing that was developing us, whether it was household chores or helping neighbors, being a community, right? It was just automatic to us. We weren't educated that this was an important tradition to maintain. So I think it's important that, yes, we talk about it and we go back to doing it.
But there are also forces, I think, in the United States, social forces that are preempting families. They're preempting families. They're saying, well, you don't need a family, that you need, some of the things that we used to do for ourselves, for our children, now the government is doing. Some of the things that kids are being taught in school used to be taught in the home. Where are values being taught? Are they being taught in the home? The single parent family, I think, is a backdrop for a lot of our problems. And it's been now an accepted part of who we are as a community. You don't need a wife. You don't need a husband. A child growing up is growing up without a father, and all that dynamic, I think, is leading to our demise. I think we all agree that the children would be better off if every child brought into this world was raised by their biological father and biological mother. If that's an ideal situation, I know it can't happen, but we have to use that as the North Star. But right now, it isn't. It isn't the North Star. It isn't the goal. Because a lot of people say, particularly popular culture is telling us that it does. You don't need that. You got women out here saying, I don't need a man. Well, you got a child, but I don't need a man. What? Really? I don't think that's true. I think every child should be parented by their biological father and mother. Every child brought into the world.
Yeah, I think some of that it comes through frustration, but I don't really believe it. I think a lot of it comes through frustration. A lot of it comes through hurt for people to regurgitate that sort of thing. But I think deep down,
hurt. What do you mean?
Well, they suffer all kinds of experiences, whether they had bad relationships or they had bad relationships with parents. I was, having a conversation because I say one of the worst things that happened in terms of relationships was the whole women's liberation movement. I think
be careful now.
I'm not being careful. It's just true. That was one of the worst movements towards the attack on family as it relates to men and women relationships, and particularly in the Black community. I think that whole movement was not beneficial to relationships within the Black community.
Or within the larger community, every other community.
Well, it's true. It's true. I think,
definitely.
but disproportionately, our community got hit by it because our communities didn't benefit from it. Black women, were not big beneficiaries of the whole women's lib movement.
Now, there would be many out there who will disagree, who will look and see what Black women have accomplished politically, for instance. They'll look at that and say, you're wrong, Mark.
Because they will argue and say that they may argue and say that I think politically Black women are forging and making some change. I don't think it was because of the women's liberation movement.
What do you think it was because of?
The women's liberation movement was largely headed up by, white women who were already privileged.
So that's it. We just had a black female mayor. We have a Black county board president. We have a Black state's attorney who's a Black woman.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Black city treasurer. We Black women are pretty much doing they're certainly outdoing Black men when it comes to having leadership positions in the political world.
Well,
and then you go to the corporate world, and you also find there are Black women out there that are we don't hear about them, talk about them, but man, they're doing incredible. Like the woman who's the CEO of Walgreens company.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she makes she makes $17 million a year. Black woman.
Yeah, I think there's a Black woman who's the president of one of the sports teams or something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Black
you
women
got the sister that runs Ariel Capital.
Melody Hobson.
Yeah. Man, Black women are, and I don't know if they attribute their successes to well, they have to whatever extent.
To the women's
feminist
liberation?
feminist movement. I mean, I don't know, but women's liberation, I would say a feminist movement, because back in the day, if you go back to the 70s, you did not have women in those kinds of positions.
Well, you didn't have very many black people in those kind of positions, period.
Well, but women in particular, I mean, have black women outdone black men when it comes to corporate advancement and political advancement? I would say black women are have done better.
Well, I don't know
than
if
black men.
I don't know that, because I don't know the statistical measures of that. I don't even know if that, I don't even know if that exists.
Well, I don't have the
just know
statistics.
I know
I'm
that
just
black
looking
women
anecdotally.
are making some progress. We, and should have a long time ago. But I think that there are a lot of black people doing great things. And I talk about that all the time, because we only see the negatives when we look at the news, in the 22-minute news cycle. That old saying, what is it? If it bleeds, it leads, that type of thing. So, we don't hear about the great positive things. We almost have to search and dig for them. They're out there, but we have to search and dig for them because they want to have us to think that black people are just, what they show us in the news media, which is a small percentage of what's happening to black people. Like I just read the young black man who scored a perfect 1,600 on his SAT in Florida, and never made a single news cycle, not one.
Yeah, you sound a lot like I heard what's the black U.S. senator from South Carolina. You sound a lot like him. He says the same exact thing that you say, that black success should not be treated as an exception. We should understand that it happens all the time, and we should be inspiring our young people and letting them know that success is right there, particularly in this country. And it's very easy to see, because Africans can come here and they can see it immediately. But we have a conversation going on in the United States about systemic racism now, and about how racism is embedded in this society, and that a black person is going to be kept in a low place for their entire life. We hear a lot of rhetoric like that, and I reject it personally. I think it's very damaging.
There's a movement to do that, but I don't think that. I think black folks have overcome. We've been overcoming.
Absolutely.
Yes. That you have these
right.
systemic efforts to push, that black folks from making progress. But
yeah, I mean,
we continue to fight, and we continue to fight against it, because we see how it's happening. Even even in voting still today, where down in Alabama, where they drew these districts that didn't equitably represent black folks in Alabama, and the lower court ruled against a map that they drew, and the Supreme Court affirmed it. But yet Alabama, the state says, well, we don't care what the Supreme Court says.
Well, they do that here in Illinois. I mean, the politicians manipulate maps in Illinois all the time, and in order to ensure that they choose
to exclude black folks from
voting. I think they do it, whether it's black folks, white folks, any kind of folks. The fact that any politician would do that is wrong, whether it's Alabama or here in Illinois. Here in Illinois, the practice is that the politician, through the legislative process, chooses his or her voters, as opposed to the voters choosing their politicians. it's exactly the opposite. And they've been doing that in Illinois for many decades. And it's particularly bad now with the Democrat Party and what they're doing and what they have done over these past several election cycles, which is to manipulate the maps. That is the biggest thing they do, even on the local level.
Yeah,
Even
well,
on the
but
local level,
that
city, the politicians choose their voters as opposed to the voters choosing their politicians. And that is at the source of a lot of the problems that we're having, particularly when we sit here and we complain about how people have been left out of the process. Well, the politicians, that's one of the ways they do it. They manipulate the maps so that they choose their voters as opposed to the voters choosing them.
Well, they haven't manipulated the maps to push a certain race of people from being equitably represented
Here in Chicago, we got a lot of black folks. We got more black elected officials in Illinois than any state in the union, more than California, New York, places that have more politicians, more people. We have more black politicians in office, elected officials, than any state in the country. That's a fact.
I'm well aware of
and
that.
So
I'm
clearly,
who
black people are
talk
being
about that all the time.
But yeah, they're being manipulated. They're being manipulated by the politicians. That's what makes it so difficult to really
being
change.
Politically manipulated and being racially disadvantaged to even participate in the political process are two different things. And I'm talking about how these systems that they use to try to disadvantage black folks.
Mm-hmm. You think it's only happening to black folks?
I didn't say that.
I said
it's largely happening to black folks. It's happening to black and brown folks all throughout this country. That has happened to. It certainly ain't happened to white folks.
It isn't?
No,
man. I don't know about that, man. I think it's happening.
Give me an example where white folks have been.
Oh man,
folks have been disadvantaged from participating in.
I think it happens.
Process.
I think it happens.
Can you give me an example?
I think it happens in parts of places where white folks live. Obviously, I think Democrats will make sure that Democrats are the majority in the districts, and in those districts where they know a Republican is going to win, they'll just put all those people together. They won't. In other words, why aren't the districts drawn as squares? Why do they go up this street or that street? White people who are Republicans feel disfranchised in Illinois. They absolutely do, because they know how their districts have been gerrymandered to favor Democrats. DuPage County right now, classic example of that. Those people will feel underrepresented, but the legislature, the rules say that the legislature draws the maps, and they've had many attempts to try to remove the map making process from the legislature and to give it to the people, so that commissions formed by the people can draw the maps. But the politicians in Illinois will not give that up. Well, they do the same thing they do it in Texas. Texas is Texas has one of the most corrupt map making situations in the country, and it favors Republicans. It's not a Democrat thing. It's just a corruption that permeates politics in the United States right now.
Well, I think the difference in some of these issues, in particular, you mentioned Illinois, but I'm talking about what's happening in other places where you have a process. You have a judiciary, and you go to the judiciary, and the judiciary looks at it and say, hey, wait a minute, you didn't do this equitably. Here it is in Alabama, in particular, where there are 28% of the population there, but yet you have drawn maps that only gives them one large majority
Congress
representation. Yes.
Yeah.
And so the court said, you got to go back and do it the right way. And they objected and went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the same thing. You got to go back and do it the right way. And they're saying no. So they're basically they're saying no. And the reason that they did that is because if they did not do that, they probably would not have the majority that they have now in Congress, which is what they're really trying to avert from losing.
Well, I would submit to you that Alabama is no more racist than Illinois when it comes to doing stuff like that. Illinois, man, come on. Illinois,
I don't know how you can
man,
make
we
that
got
kind
the
of
highest
comparison.
black unemployment rate in the country, my brother.
I don't know how
Have
you
we
can
talked
make
about
that.
that? Wait a minute. Our unemployment rate in Illinois is higher than it is in Alabama or Mississippi or Louisiana. We have the highest black unemployment rate in the country. The only place that has a higher black unemployment rate is Washington, D.C. That's it. And that's not even a state. We're number one. And I think there was just a study that done by Wallet Hub, which is like a credit bureau, that says that blacks in Illinois are farther behind economically speaking than any other any state in the country. I mean, what's that about? And while we have the most black elected officials, it's an irony. I mean, I can't fully explain it, but that's the fact. I mean, we're worse than Alabama. In fact, Florida is the best, one of the best. Where you're from?
Florida has one of the lowest wages.
But it's still the black unemployment rate in Florida is like 3.8%, when in Illinois it's over 10%. I mean, same for Texas. That's why black people leave Illinois and go to Texas and go to Tennessee and go to Florida.
Black folks are not migrating down to Florida.
Oh, they are.
No, they're not.
Oh, come on, man.
No, they're not.
Well,
retarees are going to
whatever.
Florida.
Black
people,
retirees.
People are not going to Florida
retirees.
for jobs.
No, I mean, but that's the fact. Those are the numbers. Those are the numbers that the United States Department of Labor uses. The same numbers that Joe Biden uses when he talks about Bidenomics, the same numbers, same set of numbers say that Florida, number one, has one of the lowest black unemployment rates in the country, and black businesses, as for black businesses,
not in
Florida is number one.
No, please. Not
the
true.
Small Business Association.
True. I'm from Florida.
I know you
not
are,
true.
but I'm talking about the same statistics that Joe Biden uses to tout Bidenomics. That set of statistics says Florida is number one for black businesses in the country.
First of all, you have to show me that report, and then I'm going to. I will show you that report.
Okay, let me get it up for you, man. I'll look for it right here while we're live on the air, man, because I've read it. Florida black business. I'll just put it in here and see what kind of articles we can come up with. Florida, but go ahead, man.
Florida is not number one in black businesses.
Well, it's better than Illinois,
no,
man,
it's not.
for certainly,
no,
man. Florida's black unemployment rate is low compared to Illinois.
It may be low,
but significantly
lower. They have a much lower earning income pay scale than Illinois. Much lower. Black folks make more money in Illinois than black folks.
Well, that's possible, but
that's true.
Well, that's true. It could be true.
It is true.
I'm just talking about the number of black businesses in Florida is the number one, or among the very. I think it is number one. I think it's Florida had 15. California. Okay, Florida had 15,149. Black businesses in 2020. California had 13,729. New York had 12,000 and change. Now, Illinois, they're not even in the top. I'd have to go way down the line. But Florida, right here, is saying Florida had more black businesses than California and New York. Now, I'm reading this. I don't know the source. I'm just reading it, but what can I say, Mark?
Well, look,
Those are the facts. I can't.
They could have a business that could be making $2,000 a year.
Whatever,
So,
That's more than they're making in Illinois. You can't
no.
even get a corner store
No.
in Chicago.
I promise you that's not true. I promise you that.
Are these people? They lying. They lying.
Promise you.
Are they lying?
I haven't read
Are they
it, so
lying?
I don't know.
You want to read it? I
can't,
just had it up here, man, for you.
I will study it. I
Well,
will
do that,
study
man.
it, and then we will come back next week and talk about it.
Mhm,
Because I can
mhm.
assure you
Black
that
women. Also,
those numbers.
Florida had 15,000 such businesses. California had more than California.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, well,
and more than New York. I don't even want to get into Illinois, man, because Illinois is just pathetic. Keep going, man. Keep going, brother. Keep going. You keep talking. I'm doing a little research. I just want to give you this stuff, man. Because in Florida, man, is I'll be doing a grant. I don't know what the deal is down there. You know more about Florida than me.
I sure do.
I'm just talking about these statistics.
So when they come up with those numbers,
how they
come up with those numbers is one that I want to know more about.
Well, folks, you hear it here first.
I can almost assure you.
You can go.
I can almost assure you.
You can go look it up, folks. If you find the same thing I'm doing on that page, and
you won't go to Florida and find an aerial capital.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to go to Florida.
Well,
you're not going to go to Florida and have and find what is it? Midway liquors. You're not going to go to Florida and find what you have the largest black moving company here in the country.
That's you are not
the Pew
going
Research
to
Center. Find that.
That's the Pew Research Center, man. I don't know about that Pew Research Center. I guess they just spreading those lies. That Pew Research Center, man. They're talking about Florida being a great place for black. Anyway, I'll leave it alone. I'll leave that alone. Pew Research.
I love living in Chicago. I have family back in Florida, and I go there several times a year, and
they missed y'all,
and see what's happening there. So if Florida is making some progress in that direction, man, that's great.
Florida has a fairly large university, HBCU community, right? They have FAMU,
Florida,
they have
FAMU's in Tallahassee.
They have give me some of the others.
And you have what's the other one down in southern central Florida down there? Forget the name of it. But there are two well-known HBCUs, FAMU being probably the largest, which my sister graduated from, her husband graduated from, their kids graduated from, my uncle, a lot of my family members graduated from. If I had to do it all over again, I would have gone to FAMU. Really? I had to do it all over again, but I went to the university that my mother graduated from in the law school.
Which one is that?
Nova University.
Nova
was
Nova
in Davie, Florida. My Nova was well noted for goes from preschool all the way to doctorate.
Wow,
yeah,
it's a majority black school.
No,
it's a private school.
It was a school that was predominantly known for night school. It helped people who were working people who wanted to get their degrees. So what Nova used to do was it partnered with high schools throughout Dade County, Broward County areas, the Tri-County areas, and they would use the schools at night. And you could go to college at night. You worked during the day, you go to college at night. And that's how my mother got her degree and her master's degree, and she was an early childhood educator in Head Start. And so, my mother put herself through college while my dad worked. And she was a housekeeper. She was a housekeeper and put herself through night school and became an educator.
That's
So,
great, man. That's great. That's a great story.
Yeah.
And man, so she succeeded. I mean, she raised you, man. You came out all right, I guess.
I guess I did.
I guess you did. And
No,
I mean, it seems
my
like you're
mother-
talking about a person.
My mother and
But
her sister.
But you're talking about a person who took on the system and beat it.
Yeah, well, my mother was a fighter, just like
Okay.
she's a fighter like I am. Her sister is a fighter,
Mhm.
and she worked very, very hard. She worked very hard, and they believed in education. She also believed in applying the Board of Education to the seat of understanding.
Mhm.
So
I know about that.
Yeah,
I went to that school too a couple of times.
yeah. And she claims that she didn't apply it to me much, but ask my rear end. It'll tell you a different story.
So how do you? So she succeeded. Would you say in life?
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of her education and in terms of her career, she did. I would say my mother did very well. But my mother was so committed to her children and her family and her sister, my aunt. Those two women. My mother and her sister lost their parents at very early ages. I think they were less than a year old when my grandmother passed, and they were 11, 12 or something like that. My great aunt Bert and Uncle Jim raised them. They moved around a little bit. Their father, my grandfather, was in the service up until the time that he passed. And so, but my Aunt Bert and my Uncle Jim raised them, raised all of us, if you ask that, till the time that they passed away. But my mother and her sister, man, you're talking about a team.
And they did it down south.
They were a team. They did it in Florida.
Mhm.
Yeah, they did it in Florida. And they made it work. But you also had people during that time, others who helped. They had, people who helped them, and neighbors. That's what I mean by community. Community, I think that is one thing that is broken down. I mean, when I grew up, I knew everybody just about in the neighborhood, blocks and blocks away in our neighborhood. Of course, our neighborhood was built, as I said, it was built for military blacks, but we knew everybody.
That was Richmond Heights, Florida.
Richmond Heights, Florida. Yeah. If you ever get a chance, there's a few videos out about it, and there's a book out about it. It's very interesting. I'm only sorry that we didn't learn about the history of why our community was developed until we were grown and gone. This was never taught to us.
Same thing happened to me, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
never taught to us.
I mean, I grew up in the same kind of environment. It was segregated, went to a segregated elementary school, and everybody knew everybody. My grandparents were there. I could walk to their house. I had 7 aunts and 1 uncle. I could walk to their homes.
What was the name of your community?
It was called Rock Hill. I grew up in a place called Rock Hill, Missouri, which is a sort of like just outside St. Louis. It was country, man. I mean, I had apple trees and frogs and creeks and stuff like that to hang around in.
Everything back then about black folks was country. I don't care where you were. I don't care where you were.
I mean, I may not, man, look, I may not have seen a white person till I was maybe 7, 8, 9 years old.
Well,
and
we saw white people every day, but in our little town, in our little community,
I didn't see them because I mean, once I got older and I was able to leave the street and the immediate vicinity, ride my bicycle. Yeah, I saw white folks then, and I ended up going to school with white folks when I was in the 7th grade, and because the schools integrated in the early '60s, in that part of the world. But I went to a segregated elementary school, and that was the best thing that ever happened to me because those black teachers told me I was smart. They told me, and I never forgot.
That's
So
right.
even when I went to the white school, they tried to tell me that I wasn't.
They wanted to put you in special ed by
And
at
I
the time
said, "Oh,
you're 8 or
hell
9
no,
years
no,
old.
no, no, no."
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know people, man. I know people today who were in special ed, man, who are now business executives
Because
and
that was
such.
the thing to do to
Yeah,
black boys.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
the thing to do to
yeah.
black boys. They tried to do that to me, and my mother said, "Not my son."
Really? They
Yeah,
tried to do it to you?
absolutely, not my son.
Man, I ain't gonna lie to you, man. I
Yeah.
don't agree with you all the time, but you are a smart Negro.
Yeah, she
I'll
said,
give
"Not
you
my
that.
son." I
Okay,
appreciate it.
I'll give you that.
Appreciate it. Yeah. She said, "Not my son." But see, then they didn't know I have dyslexia. They didn't know what dyslexia was
Mhm.
back then, and my mother somehow, through her ingenuity but people helped my mother. I mean, she was
So she was an
that
educator
woman.
too, right?
Yeah, she was an educator, but she was going through college at the time. She was an educator when I was in grammar school. Um, and so my mother said, "No, you will not put my son in special ed. My son will not be going to special ed.
So
He
where
learns differently."
So Mark, I'm gonna bring it
Yeah.
home. Where is that spirit today? Where is that? I mean, I hear black folks talking about systemic racism and, oh, woe is me. I can't do this. I can't do that. They got this boot on my neck. Where is that spirit? Because my mother and my father had the same spirit. That they didn't have any money. They didn't have any money. They worked every day. My dad worked at the post office. My mom cleaned houses. Then eventually got a job at a defense contractor, shuffling, typing or something like that. But they never lost that spirit that nobody's going to do this to my child. I'm going to value education. I'm going to make sure that my children go to school. Where is that spirit that your mom had, and why can't that be replicated today in on the south side, west side, south suburbs, Proviso Township? Where is that spirit, and why haven't we tapped into that in order to sell that to our children? That you can do anything you want to do, as can your children. I don't.
Well, see, I think that's where I push back a little bit because I don't think um, that we lost the spirit as much. Because again, when you and I grew up, it was a different time, and the mission was different. There was a there
No, it
was
wasn't.
let me just finish. The mission or the mission attitude was more communal. That we have to make sure that each other survives in order for our race to survive. So we had more people who were working to help each other back then, and I think that I think you have black folks doing well and working hard. The majority, we have this small group that we need to help. I really wish that we did have it. I have neighbors that are black that won't even speak to me. I have neighbors that now, but I also have neighbors that we look out for each other, right? And we do it intentionally. We have the conversation about it, intentionally looking out for each other. But that was automatic when you and I were growing up. It was automatic when you and I were growing up because I firmly believe that because black folks had to depend on each other after slavery, because you didn't have anything but each other. So you had to depend on each other. And I think that somehow that broke down in the late 70s. I saw it happening. I saw it happening. And I still point it back to, unfortunately, our generation, when they started that nonsense about, I'm not going to make my kids do this, thus, and so, when we started to go do away with the traditions that our parents had, that unfortunately, nobody sat us down, nobody taught us that we are doing this because this is the way that we have to, in order for us to move forward and in order for us to survive as a people. We were not taught that. We were not taught that. And I think that that was a big disservice to us.
You're absolutely right. And, if you want to join this conversation and give us some thoughts, your thoughts about what we're talking about, 708-223-8953. You're listening to The People Show on Intellectual Radio. My name is Charles Thomas, along with Mark Wallace. And I mean, we're chopping it up here. We're talking about some serious stuff because I think this is where the future of our community is got to be. I mean, when we and I think we have to move it. We have to understand there are forces in play here.
Sure.
Culturally, forces. I mean, in the early '90s, when we started when the rap game was taken over, at least for a while, by gangsters, about people that were they studio gangsters or whatever. We started talking about violence and disrespect.
Celebrating all that
stuff. And
because the music out of the 60s and 70s was about love, finding, it was about love, finding you somebody to connect with. And even though, it was about that, but they spoke about, Black folks moving forward. They spoke about Black folks moving forward. A lot of the stuff that came in the 90s with the, I know that there are people who, are celebrating the hip hop, whatever, and that sort of thing. And on one hand, but going back to what you said, where women would say things like, I don't need a man, I think that's the biggest bunch of nonsense, because every woman that I know that's a decent woman or a real woman wants a man and needs one.
And every man who's a decent man wants a woman who's a good woman.
And I saw when we went to the Essence Festival, I walked out when she came on. I don't know why anybody find her name is Megan the Stallion or something like that.
Oh man.
Okay. So I don't understand where the celebration of her as being, even an artist, because all she, I mean, she didn't say anything other than just repeat. Just to me, she is a terrible representation of being a Black person or a Black woman.
Well, I mean, I think you can look at them all, man. Okay. It's more than just her.
Well, but I think she is by far, look, listen, at the Essence Festival, I saw a whole lot of people in hip hop, but I found myself up dancing and celebrating the 50-year reunion. But when she got up, she was the worst, in my judgment, representation of what we had seen for 2 or 3 days. She was the worst representation. I don't know why. I don't even know why she's a star, because I didn't see anything of appeal, nothing. I saw nothing and heard nothing, right? Jill Scott, who has a power, she's not a rapper, but she has a powerful voice and she sang. And there's this other hip hop woman, Missy Elliott, who's like 51 or 52. She came out and just, man, she kind of,
she's a rapper, right?
Yeah, rocked the house, but she rocked the house and entertained people. I'm telling you, Megan the Stallion just was raunchy and just was not somebody that should be entertaining and certainly our children being exposed to.
But
she's not a good example at all.
Who is foisting Megan the Stallion or Sexy Red or who's
who's behind them?
Yeah,
I don't
who
know.
is promoting this stuff?
Yeah.
Who is bringing this? Now Kanye West got in trouble because he said some things about what's going on in, the entertainment industry, that he totally blew it, because he didn't talk about, he tried to somehow associate a religion with evil people.
Mm.
And there are evil people in every who claim to have religion of every faith.
Right.
I mean, those, he should, if he had just stopped and said, these are evil people who are foisting these acts like Megan Thee Stallion and these gangster rappers and these, these people with these guns and
negativity.
Such. Yeah, who are promoting negativity and profiteering from it. If he had just stopped there, I think he had a movement that maybe could have welled up in the community to change things. But they shot him down because they called him anti-Semitic, and he got shot down for that reason, when in fact he was saying all the right things
about the industry. Yeah, about the industry, but he conflated it with all the other nonsense.
Yeah, well, with this anti-Semitism stuff, which it had nothing to do with that. Because I can name you as many Christian business people who claim to be Christians who are doing horrible things to people.
Yeah.
I mean, but these guys, they're foisting these people.
I don't know who is behind her, but I can tell you that as someone who is not a person of rap, I've never bought a rap anything, right? And I've listened to them and that sort of thing, and I have my disagreements with the lyrics and of some of the songs that they use, because I'm not for denigrating any Black woman or person as entertainment. That to me just, it makes no sense to me.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense to me. It's like the game of golf makes no sense to me, right?
Well, I don't know if I see that analogy. I don't play golf, but I still get it. But
I'm talking about things that just don't make sense.
They don't.
That makes no sense that we're going to denigrate people, our people, as an entertainment value. That makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me.
Well, that's what they do. That's what they do, and they're making billions. That's with a B, billions of dollars doing it, and we're supposed to we're supposed to just sit back and take it, I guess, and nobody pays attention. And when somebody of the who is widely known, such as Kanye West, does it, they shot him down.
Unfortunately, I think Kanye has got some other issues that he needs help with, and that sort of thing. And I feel sad for him in a lot of places. When his mother passed, that was a devastating period in his life that I don't think he has recovered from, and I can only imagine how badly that devastated him. So, but it doesn't excuse some of the stuff that he has done with the platform that he has. It just doesn't excuse it. In particular, somebody who has the kind of wealth he has to be able to get the kind of help that he needs to help him deal with his mental challenges. My brother has mental challenges, and I've had conversations with him, and he's got to deal with that, right? He's got to deal with that if he wants to go on and have a productive remainder of his life. I said to him, listen, you got far fewer years in front of you than you do behind you. He's going to be 68 years old. And I think it's resonating, my nephew, so mental challenges and mental health is not something where it's some sort of, plague. It doesn't make you a bad person because you have some mental challenges and you need some help being able to govern yourself. There are plenty of people who are doing very well in life that have bipolar, and they have all kind of challenges. But you got to put the work in to do it. And I think that Kanye West, being the person who has that kind of platform, I wish he would just get the help, because I think he could do a lot of good.
Well, but I think there's also people who could, who certainly could pick up the baton and carry it forward, and people who are in the entertainment industry who can basically say the same thing without without the anti-Semitism, because what
you don't
he
have
was
to
saying,
insult people.
you don't
to
have
be
to
able
insult
bring
people,
the truth out.
but you can certainly speak that truth about what's happening in the entertainment industry, and just basically pick up the baton. But a lot of people now, I think, are afraid to pick up the baton because they think it's going to happen to them, that they somehow are going to be
shut down.
Because bottom line, the reason he was shut down wasn't about anti-Semitism. It was about money.
Right.
It was about money, money, money. But there are others out there who could pick that baton up. And I think we could pick it up locally. When we talk about I know the newly elected mayor wants to go to the root causes of some of the problems, or the many of the problems that are affecting the city, particularly crime-wise and with young people. I think one of the ways you attack the root causes of these problems is with information. You're going to provide information to young people that they need. If the city's going to spend however much do we spend on a police budget every year, I don't know, $1 billion. I don't know what it is, but
on a police budget,
yeah,
you say 1 billion?
I'm saying $1 billion.
I think it's more than that.
Yeah, whatever it is, you mean to tell me you can't carve out an amount of that money?
$4 billion recycling the same people. We spend that kind of money recycling the same
through
people.
the criminal justice system.
Yes,
yeah.
As opposed to you can carve out a quarter of that and help them.
But we talk about that money, all that money that can be spent, I believe, and I go back again to family values, to teach family values, to teach them and to and create and basically foster young people who know that what Megan Thee Stallion is talking about is not what we need to be talking about,
right,
to basically counter what she does. I think a city can do that. I think it's a revolutionary approach, and perhaps this mayor is somebody who could foster that, who could start doing that. I mean, put some billboards up. Put some billboards up that encourage people to spend time with their children. Start doing some public service announcements on television with Black folks talking about
positive reinforcement.
Thank you.
Positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement.
Well, I think, listen, we have a small group of, let's say we have some wayward sons out there, and the way that we deal with our wayward sons is not necessarily finding ways to incarcerate them. Like I heard this story about a guy who, because he had some marijuana, and 3 miles down the road, he's got a felony conviction. 3 miles down the road is legal. On is legal. So he's not able to vote. He loses his right to vote, which I think is ridiculous for any person, whether they're convicted or not, to lose their right to vote. I mean, that to me is just makes no sense. But I'm using that analogy is that incarceration has not been the answer. We are the most incarcerated country in the world. And it is not and we still have more issues in those negative areas. Educating people, and there are different ways that we need to utilize those forms of educate and target those groups that need that kind of help, as opposed to is villainizing a word?
That brings up a development over the past week with the Supreme Court upholding the state law that will eliminate cash bail.
Mm-hmm.
You've read in on that. I mean, I don't quite completely understand it, what it means in very practical terms.
Well, let me give it to you in the easiest ABCs.
Good.
Because cash bail was never, ever about protection of crime. It was never about that. It was whether or not you could afford your freedom. That's all cash bail is. State's attorneys, prosecutors always have had and still have the power to go before a court and to demonstrate to a court that this person should not be out on bail, period, because they are a threat to the community, or they're a risk.
Okay.
That has always been.
Okay.
Cash bail is purely about whether or not you could afford your freedom.
So does that mean that if they set my bail at $50,000, meaning I have to come up with $5,000 or whatever it is to get out?
Yeah.
And what I did, I injured somebody horribly. I didn't kill him.
Mm-hmm.
I just injured him horribly in a fight or whatever, and I'm up on second-degree murder charges. Right? They've charged me with that, and then so are they saying that the judge cannot give me $50,000 bail as opposed to giving me a bail that I can afford?
No, you don't have a bail at all.
I don't have a bail
you
at
don't
all.
have a bail at all.
Just...
Exactly, because you have people who are sitting in jail in Cook County, which is the worst in the country for people sitting in jail, and more people dying than have died on Rikers Island, waiting for trial 7, 8, 9 years because they could not afford bail.
But what if I'm charged with a crime?
Mm-hmm.
Let's not say it's murder.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I beat up my wife, and put her in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And I go to court, and the judge, I don't get bail. I can walk out
unless the state's attorney says and presents supporting evidence to the court that this person should not be released. Then that person wouldn't be released.
But but then go back to that case. I've just committed this domestic violence, and I put my wife in the hospital, and all that, and there should be no bail for me?
No, because bail is about whether or not you could afford your freedom or not. It's not about protecting the community from any inherent violence from you. That's not what bail is about. You just proved the point.
So you mean to tell me that a lot of people who commit crimes now, who are accused of committing crimes, won't get there won't be a bail amount. I stole a car. Stole a car. And it ain't the first car I ever stole. To say I got a little burglaries and some other stuff. So
do you know what the purpose of bail was?
I mean, you're the lawyer.
The purpose of bail was to make sure that you came back to court.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only purpose of bail. It had nothing to do with public safety. It was to ensure that you came back to court.
Oh man, but I think it has something to do with public safety.
It does not.
If you can, but I'm saying I'm giving you an opinion that if a person is in the neighborhood and this person is a problem, been a problem, and they rob somebody, and they may have been back to court 3 or 4 times, either as a juvenile or as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
and the police caught him. They caught him, and they actually caught him with my stuff that they took. They don't get bail. They get to go home. I mean,
they get to go home if the state does not believe that person is a threat to public safety, to the community, to themselves, to other people. But if the state does, they have a pathway where they could provide information to the court to say, no, this person should not be released
because he is an habitual criminal. He robs,
whatever the case may be.
But what if he's never been convicted? I mean, I know a lot of these young people. I mean, I know one case in particular. I'm no names, but of a guy who was a criminal, man, straight up from the time he was 13, 14 years old, had a juvenile record, really long juvenile record, got to be 17 and still was doing this stuff. But this time they caught him and took him in front of a judge. And, he was locked up in Cook County, ended up there for 3 years, awaiting trial. But people in the immediate community said, good. I'm glad he is off the street. He's off the street. He eventually ended up going to Stateville, but time served, and they let him out after a couple of months, whatever. But
well, how long did he have to wait before he actually even went to court?
3 years.
Right.
He was sitting up in Cook County jail with a charge, no conviction, never an adult conviction, but the neighborhood,
because that's all the Cook County jail is,
was thrilled that this person who had been terrorizing the neighborhood since he was 14 years old was finally off the street.
But even without bail, they still could do the same thing. You don't need bail to be able to detain a person.
I don't know, man. I think that there could be
no.
This is the first law of its kind in the country, at least to this extent. We'll have to see how it works out. What else can you say at this point? Personally, my gut is no. Lock them up.
Well, first of all,
a lot of these people need to be locked up.
That's a myth that those who want to perpetuate that racist practice, because black folks
gotta be racist,
because
man.
it
If a black man holds you
because
up,
disproportionate,
the chances
you have
of you
people
getting,
who, Charles, you have people who are sitting in Cook County Hospital. Cook County Jail.
I get that
because they stole some meat.
I got that.
All right, and they cannot afford $100 bill. That's the reason. But let's face it,
this ain't racist, man. I tell you that 95% of you, if you are a victim of a crime, a black person is going to commit the crime against you, not a white person. A black person is going to commit it tonight. If you go home, man, you get jumped. It's going to be why is it? How is it racist? How is it? What racism? A black person attacked you. Was that racist?
I'm talking about the practice of bail. I'm not talking about the person who committed the act against me. I'm talking about the system. You're conflating the two. I'm talking about the system of bail. I'm telling you what it was for. It had nothing to do.
Well,
nothing to do with.
We'll see how this works out, man. We'll see how it works out. Brothers that carjack.
But the point of
that carjack, we'll see if and they get carjacked, they get the bond set, $100,000 bond. You got to come up with $10,000 because you pistol whipped somebody when you carjacked them, and we'll see. And you get to go home. Are the bracelets involved in this at all? Like, can the judge put you on a bracelet?
Sure, he can.
He can put you on a bracelet.
Sure, he could put you on house arrest.
Yeah. Well,
that doesn't look, Charles. It does not preclude the courts or the state from doing any of the things that you're saying. I think that people misunderstand that somehow bail had to do with public safety. It has nothing to do with public safety.
Getting some people off the street.
But you don't need bail to do that.
How are you going to do it?
Because the state's attorney has the wherewithal to do that.
Toolbox that they can use to keep dangerous people,
Exactly. You don't need a
antisocial
bail
people
system to do
off
that.
the street. Well,
The
but maybe
getting
you
rid of
do.
cash
How
bail
are
was
you
for the
gonna-
sole purpose of making sure that low-level offenses, people were not kept in jail for 4, 5, and 6 years
I
waiting
get
for a
that.
trial.
I don't want to see that.
Well, that's what's happening. That's largely what's happening. And people are dying.
I would
in
agree
pretrial
that
detainment
definitely is
facilities
happening.
for that.
But there is a certain number of individuals who are hardcore criminals. Yes,
There is a
there are.
process
There are.
for them.
I know, but I don't want them
There is a
slipping through the cracks.
They don't have to slip through the
on
cracks.
Some no cash bail situation.
Look,
I think a lot
Charles,
of people feel
there
that
are
way.
some people who don't get bail. Period.
Right.
Before that,
because
okay?
they're heinous criminals.
Exactly.
Man. I
so
get
that
it.
process
But I'm
is
not
not eliminated.
I'm talking about the carjacker. I'm talking about
What about the
person
murderer
that's out here, robbing people on the street because they see a woman alone or a man alone late at night. Oh, see the market. That guy. I want that guy off the street.
The state has a.
We'll see if it works, man.
But they've had it available to them.
Works. We
had it available to them.
We will see if it works. We'll have to. I mean, we don't know because it's the first law of its kind in the country, and we'll have to see if it works. Personally, I'm not comfortable with it. You are comfortable with it.
I think
we'll see what happens.
Far beyond time that they do away with cash bail, just like they should do away with any human being that is a citizen of the United States, even if they're convicted of a crime, losing their right to vote.
That's Florida, I believe. I think in Illinois you can vote. You can vote if you're.
Oh, it's more than just Florida. It's Alabama.
Whatever. But I know there are other states. I know that,
states.
But I don't think Illinois is one of those states. I think Illinois, you can vote in Illinois if you've done your time and you're out. You can vote.
Well, in Florida,
in Florida,
there are 1.2 million. There are 1.2 million
ex-cons,
ex-felons,
or
ex-offenders,
ex-offenders,
right, that have served their time.
Mm-hmm.
That served their time, and Florida passed a law that these people can register to vote.
But that's new because back in the day, huh?
They went back and they figured out, wait a minute, we can't have all those people voting. So they went back and they said, no, if they haven't paid all their fines, they haven't paid all their restitution, then they haven't paid their debt to society. So that's what they did recently in Florida. But I'm just saying, no person, right? Or if you're going to make a person, you're going to take away their right to vote. If you're going to take a person's right to vote even after they've served their time, then that person should not even have to pay any taxes.
I haven't lived in that environment. I mean, I've read about places that are like that. But I know that Illinois, if you've done your time and you're out, and you're even in Cook County Jail, they vote. You can vote in Cook County Jail.
Well, Cook County Jail is just a pretrial detainment facility.
Exactly,
you haven't been convicted of anything in Cook County.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But
it's sort of a moot point around here.
Why I'm glad that they're getting rid of the cash bail, because it's not talked about a lot. But a number of people have died.
They got rid of it. I'm a little bit, I'm very skeptical at this point. I mean, it's just, hey man, there's a debate out there about it. I mean, there are people on the other side of it, and I respect.
I think it's
that.
Mostly because of not understanding. People are miseducated about it.
I don't know. I don't think about that. I think I think we're educated enough to know that people that commit crimes, even though they are innocent until proven guilty, we know there's a certain propensity on the part of some people to commit crimes, to do crimes. They're criminals. I mean, there are criminals in this world.
Let me give you an example.
On the cross, on Calvary, man, they were criminals. There's criminals, man, out there.
Yeah, but if you can afford your bail, I'm going to go to the worst. All right. So let's say you have murdered somebody. All right. And your bail is $1 million. But you murdered somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You come up with that $100,000 and you have the collateral for the other, you go home.
Great example. Great example.
You go home.
Great example, man. And it's certainly an unfair situation. I get that. Totally get that. Totally get it.
Like the guy who,
But
the cryptocurrency guy, his bail was $250 million.
Got it. He came up with it.
And his family came up with it. I don't know how they came up with it. I guess because of all the money he done duped everybody out of.
Right, but he
didn't deserve to be back on the street.
I ain't worried about him as much as I am about, little Spurt, little Ray, who's out here with a pistol, putting it in people's face and robbing them. Well, I want him off the street.
Well, the state's attorney, has
get him off the street.
They can. They can go before the court and they can and determine
get this person off the street because I don't want him attacking me, my wife, my grandchildren, anybody. That's all, man.
But I don't want people sitting in jail simply because they couldn't afford $100 bail and they're sitting in jail for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years and dying.
That's happened. Man.
Okay. So I think that this is, the right thing to do. And,
708-223-8953. What do you think about getting rid of cash bail? Call us here at the People's Show. I'm Charles Thomas along with Mark Wallace, and we are talking about any number of issues this tonight.
Man, it's getting hot out there.
Man, it's hot out west, man. How about that?
It's hot out west. Sea levels are rising in Florida. They're now having to build higher roads because,
Yeah, let me throw something at you real quick. A geologist was explaining that fossil fuels, oil, coal, how does that form? It forms because vegetation. It's formed out of vegetation. I mean, or animal and plant life. But it forms on the earth. I mean, the coal, for instance, formed thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago. Plant life, when it deteriorates and it goes into the whatever, it forms oil, fossil fuels. That's why I call it fossil fuels, because it's from life in the past, right? You look at Saudi Arabia, where they have all the oil, it's a desert. So sometime in the geologic past, it was a lush jungle. I mean, I'm talking a long time ago. That was climate change.
Yeah.
That was climate change.
Greenland. It's getting worse.
The reason they call Greenland is because it used to be a lush forest. Now it's an ice sheet.
Yeah.
That's climate change.
It's getting worse.
But no, I don't think it's getting worse.
Yes, it is.
No, I think it always happens.
Well, of course
it always has happened.
But it's getting worse.
Well, it's getting worse because it's going to happen anyway. I don't know. Quite frankly, I believe in climate change. But I think it's going to happen. And I don't know that anything we're doing is going to make it happen.
Well, of course.
Nor do I think there's anything that we can do to really stop it from happening.
Sure we can. And we can mitigate it from happening as fast.
Mitigate, whatever. Right. I mean, if you can. But I just think that it's going to happen. And another thing that when people talk about climate change, they never talk about God. They never talk about this as his earth. He created it.
You mean his doing?
His
is that what you're getting to?
Well, yeah, his doing.
Because he told us to take care of the earth.
Okay, fine. Right. I mean, he told us but it's his earth.
All right.
And the thing is that we've had these fossil fuels for the past, 100 years, maybe, when they started using oil and such and coal for 100 years. And did that bring about, is that going to be what causes the climate to change, or is the climate going to change anyway?
According to science,
Well,
according to
science,
scientists, yes.
what do we know now, and what we knew 100 years ago, and what we will know 100 years from now about science is going to change.
You don't believe that it is, because it's clearly.
Well, no, I believe there's climate change. I just don't know what we can do really to stop climate change from happening. I just don't know what it is, and I don't.
We can mitigate it from happening as fast as it is happening in these areas. I mean, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I went to his house. Talking to him, he was in the pool today, and I was like, "Well, you cooling off?" Like, oh, it's like taking a bath.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Because it was 118 degrees.
Where? Oh, you were talking to somebody in Arizona. Oh yeah, man, it's crazy.
118 degrees.
I got people out
Arizona.
there too.
I was in Miami, and it wasn't as hot as it was in other places, but man, it was hot. I mean, because 90 degrees in Miami is a different 90 degrees than in Chicago.
Yeah. Well, but it's not like it's never been that hot before. I mean, they say the record in the United States, I think, is like 134 degrees. I think it might be a world record measured in Death Valley, California, 134 degrees. It was that hot.
Yeah,
and
the
apparently
other day, I saw that.
The summer, that whatever that summer was extraordinarily hot. What was that about?
How long ago was that?
I don't. When the 134 degrees
Yeah.
happened, I think it was like maybe, but it had to be after they started taking
Wasn't
measurements.
there the other day there was somewhere it was 130 degrees?
No, I don't know. It was this was the all-time record for heat. It was Death Valley, California, measured heat, hottest place on earth, hottest temperature
there's
ever.
definitely
134 degrees in 1913 at Furnace Creek, which is where is that? 134 degrees, I think, in Death Valley. Now, what was that about?
Climate change. It's got to be for
in 1913. But there were a lot of cars on the road
in 1913. So this was one day that happened.
I don't know how many days, but I mean, it's 100. That is, was that climate change?
Ask the
I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's climate change. I mean, I think.
But if you're talking about a one-off,
no. Death Valley is always hot.
I know, but you're talking about a one-off.
But I'm saying it's been hot. I mean, we've had hot spells before, heat waves.
No, but we haven't had the erosion. You're having the erosion of land in Florida and northern Florida and Key West. They're saying that if something does not happen, if there is not some changes in behavior in 25 years in the Keys, where homes are built on stilts, in 25 years, all of those homes will be underwater.
And
in fact, the bridge. The 7 Mile bridge, they're saying in 25 years, at the rate that things are happening, will be underwater.
I know Barack doesn't care about it, man. He went out and bought him a mansion right on the water in Martha's Vineyard, man. He got land right there. He's not even worried about it, man. He's taking care of it. Plus, the Chinese and the Indians in India, that represents, I think, about 3 billion. That's what it'd be people, like 40% of the Earth's population. They ain't paying attention. They're not doing anything. So that means that how are you going to stop it if they're burning coal in those countries to generate electricity?
Well, I think that there are countries that are working with them. In fact, there's with this recent meeting of talking with them about doing something to cooperate with climate change.
They
There's
have-
an
yeah.
ongoing conversation.
So
with
there's
that.
a conversation, but
Yeah.
they aren't switching to electric vehicles or closing down their coal plants. In fact, they're building new coal plants in China. I think they built 6 in the last year or something like that. Burning coal. In fact, West Virginia is shipping coal to China because nobody buy it here, but they're putting it on barges and taking it overseas to China where they can burn it, I guess, and pollute the atmosphere and cause the ocean to rise in Florida. It's quite a dilemma, man.
Well, I think it goes back to the conversation of we have to start caring about each other.
Mm-hmm.
We have to start caring about each other. We're this. I guess individualism. I call this thing. I say that we're under the intoxication of individualism. It's just I got mine, you go get yours, and that's just not the way that we need. Well, it's certainly not the recipe for a growing, working society. It's just not. I mean, this ideology of I got mine, you go get yours is just that's not where we came from. Not where we came from.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And it is. I think that is more and more proving that that's not where we need to be.
Yeah, I think we only have like maybe 6-7 years left, according to I think some of the people talked about
7 years left of what?
Before, like Miami is swamped by water and Manhattan's underwater.
Not Miami, but in some areas in northern Florida where they now are having to build,
and the Keys,
and they're actually building roads. They spent $48 million, and I forget what little town this was in northern Florida where they had to relocate that community.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the predictions that were being made, that are being made by the climate change advocates, the ones that want to mitigate. They were, I think it was 5 years ago, they were talking about 12 years we had left. And we're coming, but it also takes me back to the 70s when this writer named Paul Ehrlich, I believe his name was Ehrlich, he wrote this book called The Population Bomb. And he predicted that the world was going to collapse on itself because there'll be too many people. And in fact, I think we've gone way beyond what he was predicting the world population, the breaking point would be. I mean, we hear these things all the time about these doomsayers.
Well, I don't know about all these. There is no human being that can predict the date.
Thank you.
Or the hour. There's nobody that can do that. Okay. Only God has that.
Thank you.
That authority.
Thank you, my brother.
So,
thank you.
Anybody who is predicting the day or the hour, I'm not letting that.
I'm a guy, man.
We have to also pay attention to what is happening, where we see these storms. That we see these increases of tornadoes, increases of hurricanes on off times that we have not seen before. We cannot ignore that is it's concerning. It's something that's happening, and there are science and those experts all across the world are saying the same thing. Now
this guy here, this guy wrote this book in 1968. His name is Paul Ehrlich. It's called The Population Bomb, and he was doomsaying about world population. And he was a Stanford University professor, a senior researcher emeritus in conservation biology. And you go,
but he's not God.
Oh, he surely isn't.
He is not God.
And that's exactly what I think about. A lot of the people who talk about climate change today, really, what do they know? I mean, I think that we have much more imminent issues to deal with.
So you don't think that we should pay any attention to it?
No, we can pay.
You don't think we should do anything?
We have to protect the environment, but to the point where
because God did tell us
gotten
that,
to the point where
we have a responsibility for being good stewards of
climate change when the world is not on the same page. I mean, when the climate czar rolls around in a jet plane, polluting, as he flies around by himself, Get on a commercial flight, my man. If you want to save some energy, he won't do that. He says, I got to have my private plane. And you have people like your transportation
Who is that?
secretary. That's John Kerry, man. He rides a private plane from place to place as he talks about climate change when he's polluting the air with a private jet. I mean, wait a minute, dude, you telling everybody to conserve and not pollute, and you one guy riding in your own plane from place to place polluting. And a lot of, like Barack.
I think
Barack
I
lives
think
on the coast.
Listen, I think they're developing some a fleet of electrical jets.
I hope so, man. He needs one.
I just spoke with my mentor who sells corporate jets to the major airlines, and they are developing a fleet of electrical jets.
I hope so, man, because he could use one. Definitely, because he gets around talking about climate change, riding around in a private jet, polluting. I mean, you go on a commercial airline, I mean, you're the pollution is what they call it, your carbon footprint. If you're on a commercial jet, it's what 1/200th of what it would be if you're in a private jet, but you didn't care. It's like so much of this stuff is for the rich. The rich don't have to pay attention to all this climate change talk. Like I was talking earlier,
the rich don't have to pay too much of anything.
About Barack, man, he bought a house right on the coast.
They don't have to pay too much of anything.
The ocean is
they don't want
rising,
to pay income taxes. They don't want to do anything.
Come on now, you got to be true to the cause, Mr. President. I mean, you have to be. And so a lot of people look at that and say, "Come on, what's up?"
I don't pay a whole lot of attention to Barack Obama.
Why not, man? He's former president, man. He's a historic figure.
So what? Yeah, and they're destroying our parklands over there on the east side of Chicago.
Yeah, man, they just closed off
our roads. Man. Yeah,
it's
sure
hard
did.
To get by there, man. I used to get off at the Skyway and come up Stony. I don't do that anymore.
Putting up the Obama mausoleum unto themselves.
Well, it's a historic figure, man. Let's face it, man.
Well, of course he's an historic figure. He was a former president. Of course he's an historic figure. That means that because he's an historic figure, and I can agree with him on some things, but I absolutely disagree with what they did as it relates to the Obama mausoleum.
Why?
Because first of all, you violated a law that was written over 100 and some odd years ago that you cannot use public land for a private interest. The Obama Museum is a private interest. It is not a public facility, a project. It's private. It is not the presidential library like people keep calling it. It is not.
It is not.
It is not a presidential library. Presidential libraries are run by the government. That's a presidential library. So you're going to go there and you're going to look at you're going to see artifacts and all of that sort of stuff. But I'm just not I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan of it.
Well, he's an historic figure. They say it's going to be a source of inspiration for many young people who will visit there. I'm sure the school buses will be 10 deep, and young people will see this and they'll know that they too can be the leader of the free world.
Yeah, the University of Chicago just expanded their footprint and they built this wall and cut off the black community. Basically, when you look at what they're doing is they're closing down Cornell, closing off Marquette, so that the University of Chicago expands its footprint. Black folks over here, y'all stay over there now. Now we'll let y'all come and visit. That's essentially what they've done.
My man.
And some people, Don says that Michelle Obama wanted a snow slide or sled where she grew up or something like that. I forget. He says it better. But my point is that They should never close Cornell down. And they should have never built it there. They should have built it out on, if they wanted to do something to be inspirational, that 600 acres out there on the southeast side of Chicago is shovel ready.
And it would have been good. There would have been a connection.
Yes,
because he worked with a lot of steel workers who were being laid off in the early '80s. That's where he worked.
Because he didn't have no decision in it.
Who did?
He had to kowtow to the University of Chicago.
Oh, University of Chicago. You think they're the movers and shakers behind this?
Oh,
huh?
Absolutely. In my opinion, without a doubt. The University of Chicago has not ever really been a great neighbor to the Black community. So I remember when I had the ballroom, University of Chicago had a meeting, right? They rented the ballroom, had a meeting of talking about the land grab. That's what I call it, the land grab that they were intending to do and are doing it. I mean, if you go over in Woodlawn, in West Woodlawn, to see the University of Chicago,
been there.
They are making their strides going down 61st Street, going west.
Been there.
Okay.
Been there, seen the whole thing, man.
Yeah.
Saw the whole
I'm
scam.
not a big fan of the University of Chicago. And they like to brag about how, 60% of their employees are Black.
Really?
Most of them are lower paid employees. They like to brag about that.
Well, I mean, that's jobs, man, I guess.
Listen, I'm sure they probably do some good stuff. I'm sure they, a clock is right. A broken clock is right twice a day. So I'm sure they do some good things. But I'm telling you, this whole and Black folks are so just enamored and they so excited about it. And they told Black folks, listen, we're closed down Cornell, but what we're going to do is we're going to add 10 inches of street space on Stony Island. That's only going to increase your travel time by 2 minutes. That is the biggest bunch of hogwash. I live off of Stony Island and never drive. Well, I shouldn't say never, but unless it's late at night.
You acting like it's something new to be lied to be Black and to be lied to.
I'm just venting.
In Chicago and
Cook County.
Just
venting because I know these people have this love affair with Barack Obama, and believe me, I have things that I've supported with Barack Obama. This is not one of them. This is not one of them. This is one that I think that elitism, is that what the word is, on a silver platter here. On a silver platter.
I agree. It's all about the elites, man. It's all about the elites. It's not about, it's not about.
This ain't going to do one iota to improve Black economic conditions on the South Side.
Got you. I agree with you 100%.
Downtown's going to do real well when people travel into O'Hara, Midway, and go stay downtown and take an Uber out to the mausoleum and take an Uber back. Just like they're talking about, you haven't even heard any more about Tiger Woods redoing the South Shore public golf course.
I think that still might be in the game.
Well, it may be in the game, but as though somehow that well, just make it he probably won't be around at that time. I was going to say I would walk my dog out there and let him play on the new greens, but he'll probably be in heaven by the time
they're going to keep you off them greens, man.
So because I won't be able to get a new dog. My wife is not a dog lover, so this will be the last one.
Mm-hmm. How's he doing?
He's doing okay. I have him on these supplements that they gave him, Desiquin, and he's doing a whole lot better. Yeah, he's doing a whole lot better. But so he's. Yeah,
I took a ride. Going back to it, I took a ride over in Woodlawn. And man, that whatever's happening there, they have definitely between, I guess, not Cornell, but Stony.
Mm-hmm.
All the way over to
Cottage Grove, and going back to King Drive. Yeah,
man, I tell you, it's different. It's well, I used to go to church there at 63rd and Dorchester.
Well, I have a lot of property that I've redeveloped over there. So let me tell you, I know that people want to attribute it to the Obama mausoleum.
Yeah.
This was happening long before Barack Obama was thought of.
I think the mausoleum, as you called it, it sort of certified, said no more questions. This isn't speculation anymore. I mean, there's a lot of speculation, but this isn't. We aren't speculating that this neighborhood is going to take off. I can say that the people that are going to be living there are going to be, people making six figures and well over that. I mean, that's going to be.
Well, that's happening now.
Okay.
That's happening now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's happening now. I actually funded a project where, I've done some stuff over there, and I funded a project where somebody built a block but in terms of the value that you got for it, these are $400,000 and $500,000 homes, but they're 3,500 square feet as well.
You can get 3,500 square feet over there for 500,000 now.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Man,
he did 24. He did 24 of them. Yes. And I funded the front end of it. But
are they three? They go up. Three.
Yeah. They go up. Yeah. But also, there are some things that are happening now with this whole affordable housing piece. This guy named Willie T. Farrell down in Miami is doing a great job down there. My niece is working with him with her literacy program. She's putting one, and she just opened her first one. She's going to be putting some others out in some of his facilities. But I think that, with this whole affordable piece now down in Woodlawn, they also have this thing where I think they just passed that, where if you have a building of 6 units or more or something like that, that before you can sell that building, I'm not sure how they do that, the rental association has to have the first right of refusal or something to that. I sort of disagree with that, because I'm not sure how that's going to happen, how they're going to afford to buy someone's property if they want to sell it. So, but I think that they need to do something different when it comes to housing and affordable housing. There's a different way. And I think that if people really wanted to get to the table to do it, because we got a lot of unused property that people are taking advantage of the tax system that we have in place.
Like how?
Well, because if you have a vacant property, commercial property with rental, then you get certain tax breaks as long as that property is vacant over a certain period of time. And I think that needs to be changed. I think it was because people keep those properties vacant on purpose, which is a decay on the community.
And they make money on the appreciation of the property?
Sure they do. And, because their taxes are lower because, and these are a lot of property owners that don't live in our communities, don't even live in the city. So I think that there are some people who are working, and I think Fritz Kagi is working with some other groups to change that. Because what it will do is it will force them, if they lose those tax breaks, it will force them to improve those properties and get those properties, rented and improve the overall neighborhood.
They're gonna need housing, man, for the immigrants, man, for the migrants, man. You got 11,000 people suddenly to descend on the city, and they don't have a place to live, and they're going to have to. They're spending a lot of money right now. I guess that first 50 million is gone by now.
I understand that most of it went for. I guess it was for salaries, and I believe. Well, listen, the federal government is going to have to kick in because it's a federal problem. So
yeah, but the federal government hasn't done anything, have they?
I can't say whether they have or they have not, because I don't know the answer to that. So I'm not going to say that that's the case. But it is the federal government's responsibility because it's a federal problem, and the federal government needs to kick in to deal with that situation. I just, this can't be on you and I.
Yeah, I wonder why they haven't done that, man. I mean, it to me, it's pretty obvious. I mean, they were making the political game of it by blaming the Republican governor of Texas. Okay, that sort of wore out, and now it just seems as though it's pretty obvious that the borders are the responsibility of the executive branch of government. And I mean, the conspiracy theorists are saying that this is part of a plan to bring in a new working class, because there are people that don't want to do the jobs that
part of that
people will do.
Well, the part of that is true. There are jobs out there that they can't fill and that people don't want to do. We need to do something to fix this problem and stop just politicizing it for one side or the other's
But
benefit.
it's not about being politicized.
Yes, it is.
No, it's the responsibility of the federal government.
It is
to deal with the borders.
Well,
and the federal government,
Congress needs to get together.
Well,
Congress needs to get together.
True that.
Congress needs to get together with the president. They need to get together.
They need to get together
and fix it.
They need to fix it, but they haven't. But
not one person can.
The political discourse.
Well, that's why I say
it's the governor of Texas who's sending these people. What are they supposed to do? Stay in Texas? I mean, he can't handle all that. We can't handle 11,000. He's got 7 million that came across the border.
But I think that's where it is. It's getting, the distraction is to put it on one nutball as opposed to saying, hey, let's get this straightened out. Let's fix this.
And it's a lack of leadership at the very top.
From
the president of the United States
for 40 years.
Not led on this issue. Now Trump led on the issue.
No,
he started building a wall.
Oh,
whatever, but that's what he did. He was leading. He said, "Okay, I'm going to build a wall." But so he did it. That's what he did.
80% of the people who come into this country illegal don't come by way of the borders. They come, in other ways, in planes and all that sort of stuff.
But that's fine.
Come on.
If you come in, legally,
he was not leading.
And you go through immigration.
All Trump did was shut down our asylum process. That's all.
Whatever
he
did, he was managing it in his own way that you disagree with. Okay, a lot of people disagree with it. I understand,
because it's
but
not
he
a policy.
managed it.
Fixing
At this point, this guy won't even acknowledge it. He appointed what's her name, Kamala Harris, to deal with it, and she is nowhere to be found. She's supposed to be the border czarist, I guess. She's nowhere to be found. I just think this administration has thoroughly dropped the ball on the issue, and now the cities are beginning to pay the price. And right now, we're spending probably more than $50 million just this summer trying to resettle refugees, and they're nowhere to be found. In the meantime, we got people who are homeless living alongside the expressway.
Why isn't Congress doing their job?
Because Congress is tied up in the political thing too. I agree with you 100%, but it's got to be a matter of leadership. Somebody's got to lead. Somebody's got to lead. It wasn't Nancy Pelosi. It wasn't. It has not been McCarthy. And the president
has asked and sent them,
who is cognitively challenged, is not doing the job, man.
Your visceral disdain with the president.
I have a problem with him. Exactly. I don't think he's up to the job. I don't think he's up to the job. I think there are many other people.
We have inflation is at 3%. Unemployment is down. We've created the most jobs.
Oh man, I tell you, man, all those cherry pick those stats.
That's not cherry picking.
Stats.
It's going across the board. It's going across the board.
Stats. And you got Bidenomics.
It's going across the board.
In the meantime, you go in the grocery store and they're charging you 3 times what you were paying 5 years ago.
No, they're not.
For everything.
For what?
For everything. What do you buy? You go to grocery stores?
Almost 3 or 4 times a week.
You do. And you don't notice that the prices are a lot higher?
No, the prices are a lot lower. The prices are a lot lower.
Mark.
Do you know what you pay for eggs now? Do you know how much you pay for eggs?
Eggs went down. They were up to about $5-6 a dozen, but they're down now, and that's good news.
Way down.
I would agree. That is good news.
You're getting two for one. You're getting two for one.
Store, man, spend $100 like that, and it's just me and my wife. Whoa, what happened?
Well,
What happened?
Well, you buy all that rich stuff.
But it's not true that. I do like to cook.
You buy all that rich stuff,
the rich stuff. I do, man. I absolutely do. But I mean, I'm saying that
you got it like
the
that.
economy right now. The economy right now is.
Where do you shop at? Whole Foods?
No, I don't like going in there. Costs too much.
Where are you? Trader Joe's?
No, I'm a Jewels.
Jewel.
I know I said that intentionally. I'm a Chicago guy. I said Jewels.
Soldiers Field.
Soldiers Field. I shop at Jewels. Yeah, definitely. They definitely have the right price.
Yeah,
but anyway, man, I mean, I think that, man, I don't think this guy's going to make it, man. I don't think he's going to make it, man.
He's doing just fine.
I really don't. I think you're going to have, what's his name? Greasy Newsom.
Who is that?
I call Gavin Newsom Greasy.
Oh,
he's kind of slick back. He's slick back. Greasy Newsom.
Boy, I tell you.
Greasy Newsom or Kamala will run. It's going to be a dogfight, but I don't think Biden, man, they got to do something. You seen him fall asleep with the Israeli prime minister last week? That fell asleep in the middle of the press conference. Wait, Joe. He just did, man, look, I'm old.
Ronald Reagan.
I'm old.
Did you say that?
At the end, Ronald Reagan was losing.
Not at the end.
At the end, Ronald Reagan. No, man. Ronald Reagan was sharp
man,
back at the beginning. Now, come on now.
That man,
he was sharp.
Shoot, that man used more just for men than anybody. I bet his just for men bill.
But Joe,
at the end,
man, Joe doesn't have it. He's lost a step.
Man, Joe has done a remarkable job. I'm telling you, I was not a Joe fan, but the man has done a remarkable job.
On that note, people can see for themselves and make a decision about right. Joe. But we're out of time. And they're playing us off. Us off. My name's Charles Thomas.
And I'm Mark Wallace.
Mark Wallace, my good friend. And you've been listening, or perhaps even watching, The People's Show on Intellectual Radio. Have a great week.
Good night.